Hello Eurovision fans, thank you so much for coming to my channel Eurovision Histories for my video on all the rules in Eurovision I would personally change if I was kind of the king of Eurovision and could do whatever I want to make the show better and more entertaining and fairer as well when it comes to the results. And I had a few of these ideas for quite a while, so I want to share them with you. But then I also thought I want to hear what you would change. And so I asked you in the community tab of my channel, and we will look at some of your comments later on in the video, and I will tell you what I think of your ideas as well. So that should be fun. Now, the first aspect I would change, and I kind of had this idea when I did my videos predicting the televote winner and the jury winner and thinking about the different ways these two votes work and function. In general, I think it's great. And some of you commented you want only juries or only televotes. So I'm going to lose you already after not even a minute. Because in general, I think it's great that we have two different sets of votes that work differently, that balance each other out in certain ways, and kind of even out the worst aspects of the other vote. So, for example, the juries were reintroduced because there was supposedly a lot of block voting, political voting, diaspora voting. And I do have to say that since the jury points are announced and we don't see the televote points of each country, it has become more exciting who the 12 points of each country will go to. Because before that, I could kind of predict based on diaspora or block voting or how famous an artist was in that country, who the 12 points would go to, and that made it way less exciting. And then the televote always adds a few sprinkles of fun in something in the jury vote, which is sometimes very monotone. They like ballads in English, pop songs that are kind of generic and radio friendly. And the televote also supports entries that are a bit more out there and a bit more crazy, and also in national languages and with traditional elements as well. So I like how these two complement each other and make the end result, better than either of the two results would otherwise be. However, and this is where my idea comes in, I would add a third voting group, because I think both of these votes are not really representative of what the people in that country actually like, and the people watching Eurovision especially. The jury vote obviously is not representative. That's not how it is supposed to function. The jury members are supposed to vote based on merit, on quality, based on their professional opinion as well. And then some of you might think, well, the televote is representative. What is he talking about? And in a way, yes, of course, people are voting for their favorite entry in a certain country. And then based on that, the televote points are allocated to the different songs. And we know that televoters can vote up to 20 times with one device, and they can do that for exactly the same song. And if you have more than one device, or in this case, more than one SIM card, you can also vote 40 times or 60 times or 80 times for the same song. And in that way, it is not representative anymore. And there are lots of reasons you might be motivated to vote that many times for a song. Maybe you are a huge fan of the artist that this country sent. Maybe you live in a foreign country and you want to support your home country. That's what we call diaspora votes, or some other reason. And in that way, the grandma who watches Eurovision and likes a song might not even know that she can vote 20 times, and she calls once for her favorite song, whereas the big fan of a specific artist will vote 40, 60, 80 times. And so it's not representative anymore. Just imagine, for example, Adele decides to go to Eurovision, very improbable, and she goes to Eurovision with a very bad song, even more improbable, I would say, but still, let's imagine that. And you have all the Adele fans, the die-hard Adele fans all over Europe voting for her a lot of times, whereas the rest of the public doesn't like the song and doesn't vote for the song, and still Adele gets 12 points from all over Europe. So what I would do, I would not get rid of the juries or the televote. I think they both have their function and it's important. The televote is also important to get some money for the public service broadcasters. What I would do is add a third voting group a demoscopic jury. We see that in Benidorm Fest and I think in Sanremo, even though I don't always understand how Sanremo works, but having a group that is actually representative based on age, education, whether they live in a city or in a rural area, and all of these aspects, and a group of people that is actually representative of the people in that country. And then that third aspect in the voting can be way more representative and help us find a better, more, you know, consensual result as well. I don't know how you would present that. Maybe the demoscopic vote and the televote will be put together and announced as the televote is announced at the moment. It also would lower the impact of the juries to only 30%, which a lot of people want, and still not give the televote, with all of the problems that the televote brings along with it, all that much power. The main argument against that, I think, is the cost, because obviously you have to find representative people. You probably have to pay them something to vote for their favorites in Eurovision, and then that's probably the reason why we don't have it already. But this would be something I think that would make the results way more interesting and also fairer in the end. And then no matter whether you keep the 50-50 distribution jury televote or you add the demoscopic juries, in any case, I would also change the way the juries are set up. A lot of you agreed with me in the community tab of my channel. I think having 5 jury members is way too low. I think you need at least 10 to have a bit of diversity as well. And I would add actually rules to how the jury members have to be selected, because sometimes you see the 5 jury members of a country and they're all of a certain age, of a similar age. They all have basically the same profession in pop music. So there's not a lot of variety there. So I would maybe have one spot for a vocal coach, one spot for a choreographer, one spot for a music executive, one spot for a music journalist, and that way diversify the juries. Because we've seen that they go for kind of the same kind of entry every single year, and that makes it a bit too predictable. And I think if we have the juries more diversified, that will make it more interesting. Some of you added some interesting stuff as well and said that the juries should not be allowed to be in a room together when they vote. I think that makes perfect sense, so they don't influence each other too much. They should not maybe even know who the other jury members are until after the final. And then I also like the idea to give them translations of all of the national language entries, or even if they don't speak English, of the English entries, so they can really appreciate the lyrics. If you've been to this channel, you know I love lyrics, so that could add to their professional opinion of the songs as well. Then I would distribute funds for staging. I think it is very unfair that smaller or actually less affluent countries are not able to pay for a great staging and a great stage show as well. Some countries are trying to find all the funds available to them to even pay the participation fee and the travel cost to the host city. And so they don't have any budget left when it comes to the staging, the costumes, pyrotechnics, and all of that. And so I think it would be great if the countries, kind of like with the participation fee based on their size and their economic strength, would pay money into a pot that then is distributed to all participating countries evenly, and that money can be spent on the staging. They can buy the choreographer or hire the choreographer they like the most, buy the best costume, and you kind of have more of a level playing field. That makes the whole competition fairer. And also, and I think that's a big argument for this, it will make the show more interesting for viewers, because every single country, no matter the size or the budget the public channel might have, has the ability to stage the song as well as possible. Obviously, you could argue that creativity can also help with finding a great staging. You don't always need money. But if you're a rock song and you don't have the money to pay for pyrotechnics, that can really influence how people view and consume your song. And so I think this would be an interesting idea, I do believe. Then, and this is actually a big one for me, we have to have the juries back in the semifinals, voting in the semifinals. If we have a demoscopic jury, if we have more than 5 jury members, I think the whole corruption element, which is one of the main reasons we don't have juries in the semifinals anymore, will be less of a problem. And also, there are other ways to deal with that problem. And I just think that the fact that we have televote only semifinals and then a 50% jury, 50% televote final actually means that we kind of have two different competitions. You have to be televote friendly enough to qualify from the semifinals, and then you have to appeal to 50% televote and 50% jury vote. And this leads to a few problems. The first problem is that smaller countries or countries that don't have a lot of televote support traditionally will struggle a lot more to qualify from the semifinals, which is a huge problem because they might withdraw in the end. The second problem is that having televote only semifinals means the countries that have to pass through the semifinals and qualify from them will select a lot of televote friendly songs. And this is not per se a problem, but I would say that this year it is kind of a problem because we have more fun entries, more jokier entries, more out there stagings, and we have less quality songs that will increase the reputation of Eurovision in the end. So that's a big thing. But I also think that if you have televote only semis and televote friendly songs qualify to the final, that means that the jury songs, the songs that appeal to the jury, and we've seen that with Nemo and Loreen in the last 2 years, will probably win overall because there are so many televote friendly songs that they split the votes between them. And that just means that the voting is quite unexciting. Then I think we need more codified rules in Eurovision. There are always these moments where the EBU takes a decision during the final last year or before the final last year, for example, or about certain songs this year, which words cannot be used in a certain song. Where is the line when it comes to political lyrics and all of these kinds of things? And it sometimes feels quite arbitrary because it's the reference group that decides, but the reference group always changes and there are different people deciding sort of similar questions. And I think it would be good to have something like a common law thing where precedent is looked at and then this new situation that you have to decide on is decided based on the precedent you already have. So, for example, a song talking about this or that topic was allowed. So now we have a song about a similar topic, so it should also be allowed. Or if that previous song was not allowed, then it should not be allowed today. I think that would make it fairer and also more understandable and easier to communicate the decisions of the EBU to the fans, and there would be a bit less drama in the end. Then I think it should be made clear that every single performer on the Eurovision stage, at least the main vocalists, perform their songs live. Because I think it is now so commonplace in so many different TV programs and concerts and stuff like that, that people and artists are lip syncing, that people really notice that at Eurovision there's sometimes an off-key moment. There's a note that someone didn't quite hit, and they notice that even more and think Eurovision is worse than other TV programs because the singers are worse, when the reality is that they just sing live, whereas the others are lip syncing. And so adding that and reminding people of that and doing that a few times during the show might actually help. I'm not a big fan of these logos that you see in some countries where it says Voz en Directo in Spain, for example. I would maybe have the hosts mention that, or maybe ask the commentators to mention that from time to time, just so it's in people's minds and they don't judge them too much based on their comparison to other singers. These are all the rule changes I would do. Now let's look at some of your preferred rule changes, and I'll let you know whether I would do that or why I might not want to do that. Marina says, make the previous top 6 automatic finalists rather than the big 5. I don't know why she said 6 instead of 5. Maybe that's a typo. But I'm actually not in favor of this idea, because I think just because you came top 5 in the previous year doesn't mean you have a great song the next year. I'm not going to name any names, but maybe look at some of the countries that came top 5 last year and look at their songs this year and ask yourself whether you really want them to be automatically in the final. I don't think that's a great idea. Darth Vegan says, get rid of the automatic qualifier. So a bit of a similar idea, but different. Too often do we get bland songs looking at UK and Germany, especially. I can't really argue with that. That would otherwise not make the final. Also, I'd like to see those countries actually bother to send quality. I kind of agree with the last part. I think they would bother more to send something good if they had to qualify from the semifinals. Though in recent years, I mean, France, Italy, Spain have tried a lot, and the UK and Germany are almost coming around, I think, as well in recent years. However, I did a whole video on why the Big Five exist and why I believe they still have to exist. Unfortunately, I agree that it's incredibly unfair that sometimes these songs don't deserve to be in the final and that better songs were kicked out in the semifinals. However, when you think about the number of people that live in these five countries and the huge TV markets they represent, if they are all not in the final, the viewership of Eurovision will go down very, very much, which means less promotion for all the artists that perform for the other countries. It also means that sponsors will be way less interested to participate in the whole thing. It will mean less income from televotes as well, and just also the possibility that the Big Five might withdraw and not pay their participation fee. And we need those participation fees, unfortunately. As I said, it is very unfair. I don't love that they have to exist, but I'm afraid they do have to exist. Then Big Splashy said, if a country returns after some time or hasn't qualified for a while or debuts, then it should qualify automatically. I think that's a kind of a nice idea. Not if they haven't qualified for a while. I don't think that should be something, but you have to kind of set a limit. Like if they haven't participated for, let's say, 10 years and they return, maybe give them an automatic spot in the final. I could live with that. And also if they debut, they did that with Australia and no one else because they thought Australia was just going to participate once. If a country debuts, I think you could give it an automatic position in the final as well. But you have to have a limit because otherwise countries will withdraw one year, return the next year, and then be automatic qualifiers. So some kind of limit, I think, is needed. But overall, I don't hate the idea. Then Seahorse says, no previous Eurovision winners allowed to compete again. And again, I have a whole video doing a pro and con and telling you why, in the end, I don't think we should ban Eurovision winners from competing again. Because if they have the best song in their national final, they should be allowed to win. If they bring something new to the table, then they should be allowed to come back to Eurovision. If they have a quality song, why should we not let a great song participate in Eurovision? It is a song contest also. And if they don't have a song that's good enough, they won't win their national final. I won't name any names, but that has happened more than once in the past couple of years. Then Jam67 says, singers must have a strong connection to the country they are representing, and songs must be in a country's native language. The last one, I mean, you know how much I love songs in native languages. But if you think back at the 90s when only the UK, Ireland, and Malta were able to perform in English, and look at the top three in most of those years, it was Ireland, the UK, Malta doing really well. They just have a huge advantage with their national languages. And that's why I don't think we should go back to that. It also curtails creativity. And you see this year, we have a huge amount of national language entries. You don't really need a rule for that. Just leave it up to the national broadcasters. And the other thing was, the singer should have a strong connection to their country that they represent. I also don't agree with that, which might have to do with the fact that I love that Celine Dion was able to participate in Eurovision, but maybe have some kind of a rule that either the artist or the composer has to be from the country. Like you cannot have two foreigners writing the songs and then another foreigner sing the song. Maybe one of them has to have a connection, but I don't think you should limit that too much. Then we have Mr. Dogen, who says the 6 people on stage rule, they should at least make it 8. I kind of agree with that, especially if we do the redistribution of staging funds thing. Countries will have more funds maybe to bring more people to the host city. I also think it doesn't curtail creativity as much. I know that Kai has a bit of a problem doing their performance with one person less than they had at Melody Festival, for example. It can make it more impactful as well if you have more dancers, or at least a few more dancers, and you still can have the backing vocalists and also still have backing vocals instead of pre-recorded backing vocals. So I kind of like this idea. Then Julia Elise says, I'd love to see the live orchestra make a return. Sadly, I think the chances of that happening are close to zero. Unfortunately, I think you're right, because having an orchestra learn 37 songs is just a huge expense, I think. Also, to have to pay the orchestra, find a place on the stage for them, I think it's a bit difficult to combine that with modern day Eurovision. But overall, I would like that because I think it would increase the quality of some of the entries, actually. Then Adam Tideman says, I want a spokesperson giving out the rest of the world votes and have that spokesperson come from any random country outside of Europe, rotating between the continents every year. I love that idea because it makes Eurovision even more international. Some TV presenter in some random country can appear on Eurovision, but then you have to find a rest of the world jury, because at the moment the rest of the world is only televote, and that gets combined in the overall result and gets announced with all the other televote points combined. But I wouldn't be against having a rest of the world jury as well, and then have someone announce that. I think that is a very nice idea. Well done, Adam. Then we have Ban the Wheel 13, ban pre-recorded backing vocals. I agree, especially if they remind people that all of the vocals are live. I think that gives it a bit more of a reputation of a live music event, even though the instruments are not live, unfortunately. And also more jobs for singers, simply. That's also an argument for that. Then we have G Romans 0804 saying, extending the songs to 3:30, it would allow for less repetition. Not sure about the repetition part. Maybe you could elaborate in the comments of this video. I see the argument, and a lot of people said that in the comments, that having more time for a song to develop, having more time to allow different instruments to be played, for example, allows for way more creativity. We see at Sanremo that the songs have more time to develop and become good songs, and also have more time to convince the audience that they are a good song, so to speak. I think the thing is, if you have 26 songs and add 30 seconds to each song, that just makes the show even longer than it already is. Yes, you could cut some other parts, the interval act, for example, or some parts of the interval act. But overall, I think the 3-minute rule is here to stay. And I don't necessarily think it's always a bad thing, because, for example, some of the Italian entries that have to be cut from the 4-minute or something Sanremo version to a 3-minute version, sometimes they actually get better and tighter and slicker and a better song. So I don't think it's necessarily true that they are worse if they are shorter. Then we have Smultron Poike, who says, ban the use of AI for entries as well as aspects of the show itself. Completely agree with that. I don't think AI has any place in a competition of songwriters, of artists, so I am completely on board with that. And I thought the EBU was going to do that, and then they didn't. I think that should be added to the rules right away, actually. Then something, I don't know what to say, says, it may be a dream, but I'd love if juries didn't know countries of the songs to eliminate politics in there. That's interesting. Like, have the juries evaluate the songs without telling them which country they are from. Obviously, through the national languages, you might be able to still find out. You might know the artist also if you're a jury member from a neighboring country. But yeah, I'm not completely against the idea. I think a lot of logistics would be involved to keep the jury members away from the entries, and then maybe it's harder to find jury members. But overall, it's not a bad idea, I think. And then Lana Lisa says, I would qualify all the contestants. The semifinals would only be a first show, but there would not be non-qualifiers, and all the singers would go to the final. So kind of a Sanremo style thing. I think the show is too long as it is, and if you have 37 songs, I mean, I hear people complaining that it's too many songs already, that the show is too long, that they don't remember the first couple of songs. If you have 37 songs being performed, I think people would not tune into the contest anymore, so I don't think I would do that. And then Perlamutter Forever says, not the rule, but just a wish to invite a new country next year for the 70th anniversary. I put that in as the last comment, even though it's not really a rule. But I would love to see a new country a la Australia join. I'm thinking of one where my favorite singer is from. That might be a possibility that I did an April Fool's joke for, but I don't think that's completely out of the question, actually. And that would be quite cool. I don't think we should add too many countries from all over the world, but having some that are very European also in their music and in their music industry might be interesting to do. That is the video. It is much longer than I thought it would be, but you guys had so many interesting ideas that I wanted to talk about. So thank you for that. And do subscribe to my channel. Lots more videos coming your way in the next couple of days and weeks. And then I will see you for my next video if you do subscribe. See you then, and bye-bye.